On my way here to Barcelona, got on the airplane, and pilot said, hello everybody, this is American Airlines flight to Charles de Gaulle Airport, Paris. And it was clearly not, as everybody in the plane looked up and said, we're in the wrong place. That is to say, you're in the right place today for this fundraising workshop, which is things that you need to know about raising venture capital. And this workshop is really, anybody can attend and can listen and learn something, hopefully. But really, it's intended for projects that are raising money, that are launching something or looking to scale their business. And we'll provide some helpful tips around the process of raising venture capital through the lens of Lydia and I, who are experienced venture investors. Another thing to note is that a lot of this guidance has changed in the past 2 years. So having given an equivalent talk about 3 years ago, a lot's changed. So first, a bit about us and about Blizzard.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lydia. I'm currently Vice President of Biz Dev at Avalanche, and I also co-manage the Blizzard Ecosystem Fund with Josh. So I started my career on Wall Street investing in internet and technology companies, and that was the next 10 years of my life before I decided I'd rather do crypto, and here we are.
My career has flipped frequently back and forth between entrepreneurship and investing or institutional finance. I've been co-founder of 4 companies, one which became a public company, at least one that crashed and burned in a couple of months, and another one most recently, a crypto startup that was acquired a little over 2 years ago. And I've joined Blizzard in November of last year when our fund was started. So Blizzard as a fund invests in early stage companies across the Avalanche ecosystem, everything including NFTs, DeFi, Web3 projects, infrastructure, as long as it touches the Avalanche ecosystem and helps grow the ecosystem and create some interesting projects and innovation. We are happy to take a look at it and see if we can support.
Yeah, just a bit of background. In the last 4 months now, Blizzard closed and launched in November of 2020. In that time, we've seen about 1,000 pitches. And in all of my time at Avalanche, I think we've seen close to 2,000 pitches at this point. So lots of insights to share.
Yep. So what you need to know about raising venture capital, we'll run through a couple of key points that we want to share and chat back and forth. It's more of an outline for us. So we'll talk about formation of a company, the basic funding that you need to put together, forecasting your needs, timing of this whole process. We will talk about investors and finding the right investors, pitching, evaluation, how investors evaluate you and see if it's the right play or the right investment for us. And then finally about following up and what's the appropriate way to follow up. So first off, formation.
Yeah, formation. So the first thing about fundraising is there needs to be an entity that will receive the funds, and there needs to be an entity that will operate the project or the business. So one, definitely use a lawyer. That's kind of the first and foremost advice. Anyone that you speak to who is not a lawyer can give you suggestions and recommendations, but in terms of finding the right fit and the right jurisdiction, as well as kind of the right framework for regulation and law, find a lawyer. But definitely set up your entity in the right place that works for you, and then go about and start fundraising.
And noting that neither of us are lawyers.
Yeah, we're not lawyers, by the way.
What do we most often see?
So this has changed a lot, again, like Josh said, in the last 2 years. So back in 2017, 2018, we definitely saw a lot of entities formed in the Cayman Islands. In the last year or two, we're definitely seeing a lot more in the British Virgin Islands, the BVI. And with that said, also still seeing entities in Singapore and Switzerland.
Moving on to the next, going back one, to types of funding. So the key point here is that venture capital is just one type of funding, one source of funding, and it is not appropriate for all businesses. In fact, it's not the appropriate type of funding for most businesses. You certainly hear a lot about it, but there are other ways to raise money, and there are more appropriate types. So identifying whether you should be going through the process of seeking venture capital is important as well. You can have just simple bootstrapping, kind of working on weekends, working with your own funds. Friends and family are sometimes a way to build up a business, to get to the very early stages. There are professional angel investors, people who put in a little bit of money into a lot of projects that can help and just want to get things off the ground at that stage. Venture funds like Blizzard or venture studios that work more interactively with you. And then, of course, the actual types of funding itself. So there is equity. Sometimes there's debt, though that's generally rare in the venture space. Tokens, as everybody here is talking about. DAOs can provide funding, and sometimes your organization may be a DAO itself and seek funding in a novel way from a large, diverse group of people. And then, of course, there's liquidity funding, which is more of like using liquidity from somebody else with the intent to get it back, but to help bootstrap your project. And these are only a few that were sort of top of mind. There are other ways, other places, and other types of funding.
So Josh, how early should projects be reaching out to VCs?
Even though we call it early stage investing, it is not ideas that we invest in. And most venture capitalists, same thing. They're early stage that they're investing in a company, but if you're just an idea, it's probably a little bit too early for venture capital. We generally look for projects that have something built, some sort of traction, maybe a first customer or code or about to launch, but not something that's just a concept. That's a bit too early to seek funding. Forecasting needs. You want me to take this?
Yeah, I think that was you.
You will want to forecast your needs for your project. The amount of money that you raise should be based off of that forecast. It's not just a number that people pick out of thin air, like I need $1 million for this, or I need $5 million for this. There should be a reason behind it. So sit down in a planning session and forecast what it is that you're going to need to spend in order to get to a certain milestone. Mainly these are people costs nowadays because the technology is so inexpensive. You don't need to be buying rooms full of servers anymore for most businesses. And figure out how long that will sustain you. What is the runway that it provides? So will a $1 million investment last you 1 month, 1 year, 2 years? Figure that out and make sure that customer acquisition costs as well are handled in this. So it will often cost you money, depending on the type of product or project that you have, to reach out to those customers through marketing or through public relations or whatever else there is that you need to get them, or straightforward advertising. Include those in your costs and try to figure out what it is that you need in order to get to a certain milestone, and include that in your pitch.
So I would add here, it's always going to be engineering costs, headcount, personnel, and then it's going to be marketing. So the marketing would be brand building, community building, any of those expenses. And I think the bottom line that if anyone with any experience can tell you is it will always cost more than you think. So go with that.
And we often take a look at these numbers that are provided and immediately discount them or change them. We know that it's not the result that you come out with, but it's really the activity of planning that's helpful more than the actual number at the end of the day. So we may take the numbers that you give us and double the expenses and half the revenue and say, will this business still work? We will kind of attack the numbers, but it's the process, not the end result, that's really helpful here.
And it also helps when you show that you have a true understanding of the unit economics of your project and your business. And by unit economics is basically the cost of serving one unit of product or one user. What does it cost to get that user into your community and actually using your application and your product? So having a really good understanding of that will definitely put you a step above a lot of other projects.
Yes, yeah, very important. What's the cost involved in producing one unit or one product or serving one customer? Totally agree with that.
Set expectations on timing. So here, not much to say on this except that it will always also take longer than you expect. I would say kind of give your best hopes for timing and know that in the back of your mind it's probably going to be longer, but at least guide investors to the time frame that you're hoping for, and then everyone can be aligned to at least work towards that goal. But everything will take longer.
What about those projects that say they'd closed and gotten all their investors together and closed in 1 week?
I would say no one really knows what's happening behind closed doors. Those are definitely unusual and exceptional. So just kind of know that's going to take longer than you think.
It's definitely not the norm.
All right, finding investors. So I think the high-level strategy that every project that's raising is identify what you're looking for in strategic partners, identify what kind of value add that you want them to bring, and then you come up with a target list. It's very important to know who to go after and then dig into your network to find contacts, anyone that may know someone at some fund or at some investment DAO. Just kind of get in front of the right people and always make sure that you've got your pitch ready. That's always another one. And then mine the network is kind of like where we always come back to.
Yeah, how do you find investors in the first place? How do you get to the top of the funnel?
So the best way, again, is to see who you guys know in your network. Also, there are resources out there just to figure out what kind of funds are investing in what sectors. And what are some that you like to use, Josh?
I'd sometimes look at some online sources like Crunchbase to at least get an initial feeling. And it can provide a little bit of research about which investors invest in which types of companies, what stage, are they already invested in something that competes with my company. But
Yep.
At the end of the day, there'll be just a lot of still asking questions. There's not a perfect information source for this. Develop a pitch. Sounds somewhat obvious, but we certainly do encounter a lot of people who don't have their pitch together. They're still kind of ideating. What VCs really want to see is some sort of developed and practiced pitch, often in slides, though it doesn't have to be, and really demonstrate what is the progress that the business has made to date on there. You'll also want to tailor your pitch to your audience. Not everybody should receive the same exact information or the same exact pitch, and make sure that you rehearse or practice your pitch. It seems somewhat obvious to me, these things, but it's still important to say, important to know what you're saying, what you're pitching, and be able to really convince somebody of it. You should not be reading this for the first time when you're in front of others.
And I would just add to this, there are a lot of guides nowadays about how you should build your deck. And usually the fewer words that you have, the better and more easily digestible. And if you're sending out, from the eyes of the investor, we're getting lots of decks. So it's important to us that we can glean what your project is or what you're building from going through the decks quickly. Unfortunately, it just kind of is the nature of the beast. Not everyone can really deeply read every slide. And this kind of happens to all funds, really. So kind of distill the most important information onto each slide so that as we're flicking past, we do see what you're building. What's the biggest mistake you've seen in a pitch deck?
That's a good question. I've seen a lot of times people pitching with different information or different numbers than what is in the deck. So the deck hasn't been updated, doesn't reflect their current business. And I really, what you say should be in writing in there as well, so that we remember when I'm going through the deck afterwards, I say, oh yeah, that's where they spent this money, or that's what they're going for here. No, what was going through my mind is, so I've been on both sides, having flipped back and forth from entrepreneurship to investor a few times. One of my pitches was actually done to song, so we sang the pitch, and it was a lot of fun. I haven't heard any of those lately, but sometimes it's what's needed to get people's attention. Not a recommendation, just a past experience. Let's talk about understanding the investor point of view.
Want to take the people opportunity?
Sure. So it's useful to try to put yourself in the shoes of the investor for just a moment and understand what they're expecting to see, what types of things they're judging you on, and perhaps tailor to answer some of those questions. So for us, and for venture capital in general, generally uses POCD: people, opportunity, context, and deal. Those are the basic things that I'm looking for. So with people, who is the team? Do they have credibility in this space? Have they been in the space at all? Have they been in something adjacent? Have they built some other product or project that's been a success? Opportunity. So specifically, what is it that the business does? Is this interesting? Are they tackling a difficult or interesting problem that exists in the marketplace? The context. So these are more the exogenous factors that are out there. So maybe there is a new regulation or law that enables a new type of security or DeFi project in a particular country or region. So something exogenous that's happening, the context of the deal. And then the deal itself, which is mostly the financials. So sometimes everything else can be great, but the deal itself is not that attractive. As investors, we're fiduciaries for other people's money, other people that have put in money into our fund. And we need to find something that will have a reasonable success or reasonable probability of having a return on that investment sometime in the future.
So for Blizzard, we can definitely speak to Blizzard as it's an Avalanche ecosystem fund. So there are a couple of different things to consider when you're speaking with ecosystem funds, which is one, how does the project that you're building benefit the broader Avalanche ecosystem? So we look at a lot of things within the context of, does this fit a missing piece that we currently don't have? Or is it a DeFi primitive that still needs to be built? Is it another money Lego that will add value or add activity to the blockchain? So there are a lot of things to consider for Blizzard beyond kind of like looking at a project from the people, opportunity, context, and deal aspects. It's also largely, how does this benefit everyone who's using the Avalanche ecosystem as a whole? So that's kind of one thing to keep in mind if anyone is hoping to reach out to Blizzard at any time.
And for other funds or other investors, similar type of thing. Put yourself in their shoes. What are they looking for? Are they looking for only infrastructure projects or only DeFi projects or things like that? You have to consider what they are willing to invest in, what they're looking for, and try to find a match there. And following up, it is okay. It is welcome to follow up after a pitch. A simple thank you is nice. Providing any additional materials or anything that was requested during the conversation. Any updates to the business, even a week or two later or as it goes on. If it's substantial and you think that we need to know about it, please send it along. And help drive, this goes for any investor, help drive towards a decision. So you need to sort of be on top of them and say, here's what's happening with the round, here's what's happening with the business. We really want you to be in if that's the case, and drive it towards a yes or a no. That's all needed. And remember that as much as a VC may like or love your business and what you're doing, they're often seeing a large amount of deal flow. Lydia mentioned some of the quantity or velocity of deals that we see as well. And it's a lot of context switching. So it's okay to be back towards us and to be back towards your investor and say, here's where we are, we need to get towards a decision.
What's also helpful is revisiting the timeline that we talked about before. Timelines are always shifting, and so it's always great to keep your potential investors up to date on where you are, how the round is shaping up, and where you expect to be in a given amount of time. So sending along those updates, say like, hey, we're looking to close in about 2 weeks, where are you guys now? Like, investors don't mind those pings. In fact, it probably helps them to remember to kind of come back to this and revisit it and get going on things if they're really excited. So Josh, if the follow-up isn't so great, like, can you give us some examples of what follow-ups have not resulted in an outcome that was probably good for the project, and another way that showed a really good high-quality follow-up?
Well, a really good high-quality follow-up has been business statistics. So if the business is up and running and you say, here, now we're learning that our customer acquisition cost is this, or here's what it's been over time, or our revenue is suddenly spiking, or we're having to allocate resources or make changes to the business because of what we learned by being in the market. We love to hear those types of things. Those really help us understand that you know how to manage a business and are likely to be successful. Even if the numbers aren't great that you have, at least you're learning and adapting from them. So those are great types of updates. The non-productive updates, I don't know, do you have any that pop to mind?
The ones that aren't updates, I guess. So as always, when you're interacting with your potential investors, the more information is the better, so that there's less reason for them to feel like they don't know what's going on, and to give them all the information that they would need to evaluate the project will get you through the process much faster. And that's kind of the only thing, it's just provide as much information as you can. And definitely be proactive on follow-ups.
Yes. So there are a bunch of topics, particularly around venture finance, that we did not get to, but Lydia and I have good experience with. So things around tokenomics or specific deal terms, cap tables and valuations. I'm your man for those. We weren't able to cover them today, but we're happy to answer some individual questions after this individually.
Yeah.
But overall, hope this was helpful. Just a few things to keep in mind as you're raising money. And some of our experiences as well. Was happy to share, and I'm happy to connect with anybody throughout the remainder of the conference.